There we go. Thank you. Hi, Brooklyn. Are you there? Hi, I'm Lisa. How are you today?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we can start talking about our takeaways from the articles that we read. I don't know if anybody wants to share first.
Yeah, I can go. I definitely thought that they were helpful because sometimes I think the one that I'm like the most that really kind of stood out to me was focusing on the activities rather than the learning goals, because I definitely love to be like, ooh, I have this idea, I have that idea, instead of, remembering that they also have to really learn get the learning goal. And so that one, I was like, oh, yikes.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought about that, and I was like, I definitely need to kind of crack down on that one for sure.
Yeah. What did you think, Cody?
Yeah, I was kind of along with make sure you have good activities for them, and more instead of focusing just on the learning outcomes, to get a good activity for them so that they can have fun while doing it and not just sitting there lecture.
Yeah, I have a problem, honestly, with like when it talked about including variety in your instruction, thinking about how to do that with math, because the math curriculum that we're using is this new, it's Engage New York, and it's good, and your lessons are pretty much mapped out for you, but there's not a lot of variety. So I've been trying to figure out ways to make it more exciting and just to make it more fun, or just to bring in a variety of different topics into it. And I don't really know that I've figured that out yet. So that's kind of been.
We use Engage out here in Trust too, and I agree. Like I've just observed the math so far, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
It's a lot. Yeah, I've been teaching it, and I had to study it in order to teach it, but just because it's not the way that we're used to it. But then it's not good for including, I think, a good variety. So I don't know, try to make it fun. Another thing that I feel like I'm guilty of as far as the 5 lesson planning mistakes is just planning the meat of the lesson and not doing the beginning or like the wrap up, because I feel like, especially with the wrap up, you run out of time almost. So I always feel like, okay, all right, now let's get ready for specials, or, like I'm not taking the time to do that wrap up that's supposed to help them like solidify their learning. So that was another thing that I thought about.
I agree. I struggle with that too, because every time I write a lesson plan, it's just so easy to get to everything that you need to cover. And it's hard for like, oh, they need a reminder of what they learned and that stuff. But I've learned, like, through just watching my teacher, like, that's important. Otherwise they will forget. They won't remember.
Right.
Remind them what they learned the day before, and then the next day, like, okay, so cover them. Yeah, I agree. When I write lesson plans, that's like the last thing that I try to write, because I'm like, I don't.
Or just trying to remind them at the beginning, okay, this is why we're learning this. Like we did an ELA on sequence. And so for me, I was like having to think about like, why are you learning this? You're not learning this just to learn this. This is for understanding what you read. And so how is this going to help you? And I thought, and that was more of a later thought than a planned thing that I was going to say. So I don't know.
One of the things that I feel like I do well, that's a mistake on here. It says focusing on what the teacher will do rather than what the kids will do. I feel like actually focus on what the kids are supposed to be doing. You're fine. More on what the kids are supposed to be doing than myself, when that might be a mistake. I'm not sure, because sometimes I'm like, because I was previously at Mid-American Nazarene University, and we literally had to write a script. Like, it had to be a full-blown
script.
Wow.
Okay.
Less here at Fort Hays, like, it's less of a script, but it was like word for word, like, what questions are you asking? What are you saying? How, I mean, it was very exciting. So like, that's still in my brain. But I definitely focus more on the kids than myself. And so I think, so that's good for me to realize that, like, that's okay, to like, it is about the kids at the end of the day and what they're learning. I mean, yes, able to instruct them properly, but it's also like, okay for us to make mistakes and things like that.
Or like be able to pivot mid-lesson, you think, I mean, if you have a script and you follow it, I think you have to be able to be flexible
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to follow the script because you don't know what kind of questions they're going to have. You think you're explaining something, obviously they don't understand, and you have to be able to pivot and adapt to what the class is doing and not just leave them in the dust, I think, too. So,
Sure. Sure.
so Cody, where are you student teaching?
I'm student teaching over at Ellis High School.
In Ellis, Kansas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what subject are you teaching?
Wood shop.
Oh, awesome. Cool. That's awesome. We're both elementary. We're both fourth grade. We found that out when we started the Zoom call. So we're both probably in a little different world than high school.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I
what
also made a note too about using technology. And I feel like that technology should add something to the lesson when you use it, as opposed to just replacing something. Like instead of typing, for example, it made me think of this. It's like you give them their iPads or their laptops and say, type up your paper. Well, that's replacing pen and paper. And I know that they are supposed to learn how to type, and I understand the value of that, but that to me is a replacement and not an addition, if that makes sense. So it's like you're going to have them on a certain app. Like I know we're using like Raz Kids, we're using some different things. Like you want to make sure that's adding to their learning as opposed to just replacing a book, you know?
I definitely struggle with including technology. I'm 24, but I'm very old school. Like I'm like, give me paper.
Mhm.
But I hate iPads. They just drive me nuts. But
Yeah.
so I'm definitely, that's hard for me to
Mhm.
find, especially with fourth graders. Like you hand them an iPad, it's like, ooh, iPad, and
Mhm.
not what's going on over here, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely something I had to get used to because when I first graduated from college, I'll tell you how old I am. It was 2001. So going back like to school was very difficult because it's like, that's not how it was when I first, yeah. So it tells you I'm older. So anyway, but
Well, for technology wise, for my stuff, it's actually really important because, like, say for AutoCAD, we have to have the kids draw up their plans for their projects on AutoCAD so they know how the ins and outs, the measurements, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
that makes
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. They have to know how to use that software. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's interesting. So yeah.
So I think we've covered the first two things, kind of the mistakes and then how we're handling lesson planning. Do we want to talk about like what we've taken away so far from student teaching?
Mhm.
So for me, I'm having a great time, but I have been subbing for the last 2 years, and so
Oh.
it's hard for me to go in and not just like jump in. So the first 2 weeks of just observation have just been like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to get my hands on. I want to start teaching the kids. But I learned a lot because I was already so set in like my own ways of how I want to teach and run a classroom. So it's kind of been interesting for me to see another teacher and how she handles kids and how she teaches different things. And so I think it's been really good for me because I was like, everyone else is wrong. You know, you kind of get that. And so it's been good for me to see that. And I have a really good group of kids, just very chatty.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be a good year. I think I'm definitely gonna learn a lot. I'm super excited.
Good. Yeah, I'm in a little bit of a different scenario. So I'm technically student teaching, but I'm under a long-term certified sub that the district hired in. So pretty much from day one, like I set up the classroom, I did parent teacher conferences, I've been doing the planning with the other fourth grade teachers, and I've been doing like 100% of the teaching. And the nice thing is after I get my certification, I have a job. So like the class will be mine. Because I actually worked in this school for 5 years before. I was a reading interventionist. It wasn't a certified position, obviously, because but so I haven't gotten a chance to do any observations, but that's actually on my list of things I need to do, where I need to have him actually teach the class and me get out of the classroom and go observe, especially the other fourth grade teachers teaching the types of lessons that I'm teaching. So haven't had a chance to do that yet. It's been a little busy. So
Oh, I'm busy. That's a lot.
It is a lot. I know it really is. And I keep forgetting, but like, I love it. Like, I love the kids. They're great. We have a few challenges to overcome, but we'll get there. So,
Really cool.
yeah. So I guess I feel lucky though. It's like a lot more work on the front end, but I'll have a job in December. So I think that's a good trade-off. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cody, how's yours been going?
Been going all right. I mean, so far it's been just a lot of introductory stuff, just kind of a lot of just like the freshmen, they've been working on AutoCAD. The other sophomore and juniors and seniors, they've been doing a lot of safety tests and stuff for the shop. For I think the first 3 days this week, the freshmen actually didn't have AutoCAD on their desks or on their computers yet, so we had to improvise a little bit. So we had to they ended up doing some like drawing charades where there's 3 in a group, one's the communicator, one translator, and the person drawing.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was kind of funny to watch some of them, and we would time them to see how long each group would go.
Mhm.
And then on Tuesday, we went through and we did a balloon tower with 10 balloons. They got 10 balloons and 3 pieces of 3-foot tape to use. And had to build the tallest tower within 15 minutes.
Oh,
But we gave them like about a 5-minute time before that to plan
man. Mm-hmm.
and blow up the balloons.
It's a good lesson in teamwork, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's good.
Cool. So have you started like taking over yet, or have you just been observing?
I've just been observing. We've only had 1 week and 2 days.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's how long we've been in school too. A week and 2 days exactly. So yeah.
this is our second full week with kids. I reported on the 6th.
Oh, that's early.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was really sad when I opened up like the Fort Hayes calendar and it was like classes start the 23rd, and I was like, oh, good for them.
Good for them.
Yeah. But does that mean you get to finish your actual student teaching early though, because you started so early? Is that what that means?
I don't know. I think I'm done on the 10th. We kind of mapped.
Sorry.
Weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It'll be okay. It's been nice. So I don't know how this happened, but I'm actually at the school that my mom teaches at. My mom teaches 5th grade.
So was that just like coincidental?
Well, I asked to go there, but not because of my mom. I teach at the high school, or I coach basketball at the high school that's next door.
Oh, okay.
And so it's been fun being around there and like having her around. Like the whole run around. What do you suggest for this? And
that's cool.
I know really well too. So
yeah, I intentionally came to this school to student teach that I worked at for 5 years before, because I knew that, I mean, the principal and I have a like good relationship, good rapport. And she was like, oh, if you're going to do this, come back, and I know a lot of the teachers and I know the system of the school. So it wasn't, if I was going to be like, I always say like, oh, I was thrown in the deep end and kind of learning how to swim here. At least I'm like familiar with the procedures of the school. And it wasn't like, as deer in headlights, but it was a lot because they decided to they got the enrollment numbers were so high that they had to add another 4th grade section like the week before school started. So that's how this happened. So it's not like they just had, the position sitting open or anything, but I mean, I have 23 in my class even, and it was like the additions. I mean, like we've just got so many, and I've had 3 new kids this week too. I had one Monday, I had one Wednesday, one Friday. And so it's like you're scrambling, like, oh, I'm getting a new kid tomorrow. I guess I get to stay late and put together all the material, make sure they have everything. And then I was like, oh my gosh, but it'll be okay. Means to an end. It'll be fun.
Yes, our numbers are really high this year too.
So how many are in your class?
I have 20 kids in my class.
20. Okay.
But I mean, just overall, the school got 150 more kids.
Yep. Ours is, yeah, I know, a large percentage.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of my students were remote